Okay, now, excuse me, apparently I have to cough. Now it's time for some fun with factoring, okay? I just want to review real quick the 4 basic types of factoring that you might need on this. Your basic, the most basic, is when your leading coefficient is 1, meaning there's no number in front of the x squared. I know you know how to do that. You find 2 numbers that multiply to give you this, the 6, which is also the C, we call it, and add to give me the B. So 2 numbers that multiply to give me 6, add to give me -5. So that would be -2 and -3. And all we have to do is write them like this. And that's my answer. Remember that you can always FOIL to check your factoring. Difference of squares we also just talked about a second ago. That's like this, or maybe like this if it's real complicated. But the point is it's something squared minus something else squared. So this is x times x, and this is 3 times 3. So it's going to be x plus 3, x minus 3. It always works that way. This is 2x times 2x. This is 5y times 5y. So it's going to be 2x plus 5y, 2x minus 5y. Always works that way. Now the one we've most needed to work on today, this is where the leading coefficient is not 1. In other words, the number in front of x squared is not 1. That's the kind where you need the box method. So we did this one, was the last one we did in class. Okay, this is where I start by multiplying this number and this number, the A and the C. So I multiply 3 times -2 and I get -6. And I find 2 numbers that multiply to give me that, not -2, and add to give me 5. That doesn't change. My 2 numbers are going to be +6, -1. So then what happens is I take that middle term and I split it into +6x and -1x. It still needs the x because it's still the b term. First term stays the same, +6x, -1x. Last term stays the same. The order doesn't matter when you split that middle term. I could have put -1x plus 6x. That's fine. So then I take my box. I like to think of it as a 4 square. And I put 3x squared, 6x, -1x, and -2. And then I find the GCF of each row and each column. So the greatest common factor of these two is 3x. Of these two, it's just 1 because there's not really anything else. But if there's a negative in the box next to where I'm writing, I take it along for the ride. Only if it's in the next box right next to where I'm writing, or the closest box right below where I'm writing or next to. These two, the greatest common factor is x. These two, the greatest common factor is 2. It's not going to be negative because the 6x is not negative. So my answer is 3x minus 1 times x plus 2. Okay, finally, just like in number 4, we do need to be aware that technically you should always check first to see if a GCF can be factored out. Like for instance in number 4, we had this. And all of those have x in them. So I can take that out first and then move on from there. And I would go ahead and factor that the rest of the way. What's that, plus 3 minus 2? Sometimes all you have is a GCF, like it might be 5x squared minus 10x. Well, 5x can come out of both of them. It leaves an x in the first one and a -2 in the second one. And that's it. So you always should check for GCF before you do any other method. That's always the first thing you should do. A lot of times it'll make it a lot simpler and make it to where you don't have to do anything else. Well, you might have to do something else, but you might have to, What you have left to do becomes less complicated if you have taken out the greatest common factor first.